Coming up on our newscast tonight. Tensions continue to mount between Seoul and Tokyo due to the recent low-altitude flybys involving Japanese warplanes. The two sides' military officials may hold deeper discussions to resolve the issue. Another South Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery died. With the passing of the 93-year-old, only 24 others are alive and waiting for an official apology from Tokyo. President Jaein sits down for talks with the visiting Emir of Qatar. The South Korean leader and Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani agreed to strengthen bilateral ties. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. Daniel Che. Tensions have been rising sharply between Seoul and Tokyo in recent weeks over low-altitude flights by Japanese planes near South Korean warships. According to the nation's defense ministry, the issue could be put on the table at this year's Western Pacific Naval Symposium, a forum for countries in the region to discuss naval affairs. Kan Young-woo has our top story.
On Monday, Seoul's Ministry of National Defense said the dispute over the Japanese warplanes' aggressive low-altitude flybys could be discussed in working-level talks at the Western Pacific Naval Symposium set for April.
If there's a need to talk about the flybys at the working-level meeting, then it should be discussed so regulations and guidelines can be established to prevent similar incidents in the future.
If the matter does come up at the Western Pacific Naval Symposium, then a guideline for evaluating the flights could be the Code of Unplanned Encounters at Sea, or CUES. The CUES was signed at the symposium in 2014 by 21 Pacific nations, including South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, to prevent tensions escalating between different countries' militaries at sea. Meanwhile, Japan is reportedly rethinking its plan to send warships to an international maritime exercise that will begin in waters off the Korean peninsula from late April to early May. But Seoul's defense ministry says a final decision on which countries will join the exercise and on what scale will be made in working-level talks between the participating countries, likely to take place at the end of February. Tensions seemed to rise late last week also, when the South Korean defense minister paid a visit on Saturday to Naval Operations Command in Busan, following a trip by the Japanese defense minister the day before to a naval airbase near Yokohama. Experts have suggested that Japan could be using the military dispute to increase public support for the Abe administration. The military spat erupted back in December when Japan claimed that a South Korean warship used its targeting radar on a Japanese plane, something Seoul says there's no evidence for. And last week, Seoul's defense ministry released photographs of a Japanese warplane conducting a low-altitude flyby. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
Seoul's top diplomat held talks with U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Harry Harris, covering a range of issues including Pyongyang's denuclearization. Harris is thought to have delivered New Year's greetings to Kang Kyung-hwa, and according to the foreign ministry, they also talked about the issue of how the allies are going to share defense costs. Harris also met Defense Minister Chung Kyung-do earlier in the day. Although the details of that session is disclosed, some speculate the duo may have discussed the radar dispute between Seoul and Tokyo. Japan's Prime Minister expressed willingness to normalize relations with North Korea while working closely with the international community. However, in what seems to be a deliberate move, Shinzo Abe did not mention ties with Seoul. Park Ji-won shares with us his remarks.
In his annual policy speech to the Japanese Diet on Monday, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he would be willing to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He said Pyongyang and Tokyo need to, quote, break the shell of mutual distrust to resolve the issue of the regime's nuclear program and the abductions of Japanese citizens by North Korean agents back in the 1970s and 80s. Abe, however, omitted the mentioning of Japan's bilateral relationship with South Korea. Until last year's annual policy speech, Abe emphasized the cooperative partnership with Seoul. Experts think the unprecedented omission of such paragraph regarding ties with South Korea seems to reflect Abe's strategic decision to use the current sour relationship with Seoul for its domestic political interests. The Japanese Prime Minister stressed a strengthened alliance with the U.S., a new phase in bilateral ties with China, and steps towards a peace treaty with Russia. Meanwhile, Abe also mentioned the issue of amending Japan's pacifist constitution at the very end of his speech, saying he hopes more discussions to be held at the Diet. Monday's annual policy speech was Abe's 7th policy speech since 2012. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Another Korean survivor of Japanese military sexual slavery during World War II has passed away. According to a civic group that advocates for the victims, a 93-year-old woman known to the media only by her surname, Yi, died early Monday morning after suffering from poor health. In 1942, she was kidnapped on her way home from work at the age of 17 and was forced to serve dozens of Japanese soldiers every day in brothels in Manchuria. There are now only 24 South Korean victims still alive. Seoul and Tokyo agreed in 2015 to set up a foundation to help the victims, but the two sides are now working to disband it because that 2015 deal did not reflect the survivors' wishes. Seoul and Pyongyang will be able to initiate joint operation to recover Korean War remains as agreed upon in the Panmunjom Declaration. They're hoping to start work around Arrowhead Hill in Cheolwon County, Gangwon-do Province, from April. According to diplomatic sources on Monday, it was confirmed last week the UN Security Council lifted sanctions on that project. Earlier this month, during a teleconference, Seoul and Washington shared opinions on easing international sanctions on the joint recovery operation and road modernization in North Korea. Pyongyang and Beijing appear to be seeking to boost relations. The regime sent artists to perform a show in China to celebrate decades of diplomatic ties. Also, the two sides may have coordinated strategies for the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit. Woo Jung-hee fills us in on the latest.
North Korea and China forging stronger ties once again ahead of the North Korea-U.S. summit. According to Chinese media outlets, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with North Korea's Lee Soo-yong in Beijing on Sunday and watched a performance by a visiting North Korean art troupe. A group of about 280 North Korean artists went to the Chinese capital last week after being invited by China's ruling party, and Lee Soo-yong, who heads Pyongyang's international department, led the group. This was the first performance by North Korean artists in China since December 2015. Pyongyang and Beijing celebrated their 70 years of diplomatic relations while exchanging messages of, quote, cordial greetings and, quote, profound friendship. But while showing their strong ties, Chinese president also took the opportunity to say that Beijing will pursue an active role in denuclearization talks. Mentioning he's had 4 summits with the North Korean leader since 2018, Xi highlighted that Beijing is ready to work with Pyongyang in achieving world peace and stability. The concert comes 3 weeks after Kim Jong-un crossed over to Beijing for the 4th time earlier this year to discuss strategies on nuclear negotiations. And it also comes a month before the second North Korea-U.S. summit, expected to be held in late February. Pundits believe Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping could have exchanged opinions once again on the upcoming summit to coordinate strategies through the visiting North Korean delegation. Woo Jung-hee, Arirang News.
At the nation's top office, President Moon Jae-in met with the visiting Emir of Qatar. During the sit-down, the duo agreed to upgrade their country's comprehensive partnership. Shinzo Abes has the highlights from that session.
President Moon Jae-in's first diplomatic schedule of the year, a summit meeting with Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the visiting Emir of Qatar, in which they discussed strengthening their country's ties both economically and culturally.
한국과 카타르 양국이 소중한 친구이자 전방위적 동반자로서 다양한 분야에서 우호 협력 관계를 발전시켜 오고 있는 것을 아주 기쁘게 생각합니다. 오늘 날 양국 간 교역 규모는 170억 불에 달하며 많은 한국 기업들이 카타르에 진출하여 인프라 건설과 경제 발전에 기여를 해왔습니다.
A large chunk of that trade volume comes from Seoul's imports of liquefied natural gas from the Gulf state, with industry data showing that more than 30% of Korea's total LNG imports comes from Qatar. And in a gesture that would help bring the two sides closer than ever, Qatar say it will consider buying 60 new LNG carriers from Seoul. The two leaders discuss ways for South Korean firms in Qatar to grow in several areas, including smart farming and smart grid technology, in addition to the sectors of energy and construction where they mainly are now. Korea and Qatar have also agreed to forge closer ties in Qatari maritime affairs, with two sides promising to exchange related technologies and proceed with joint research projects as Qatar plans to ease its dependence on foreign countries for food. Solidifying their cooperation even further through cultural ties, the two sides also exchanged their experience in hosting global sporting events, especially with Qatar now prepping for the 2020 FIFA World Cup, the first time for the event to be hosted by a country in the Middle East.
The 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul, the 2002 Asian Games in Busan, the 2002 FIFA World Cup, and the Pyeongyang Winter Olympics. Seoul has experience in hosting multiple large sporting events. We will study those experiences and will be sure to ask for support.
And that support will start with transportation infrastructure on land and on the sea. President Moon having suggested introducing Qatar buses that run on compressed natural gas as the Gulf state readies to welcome the world for the 2020 World Cup. Shin, Arirang News.
Also at the presidential office, the South Korean leader met with Lee Chang-yong, director of the Asia and Pacific Department at the IMF, to discuss the global economic outlook. The official expressed optimism that despite the slowdown in the global economy that began in the latter half of last year, he does not see the world entering a recession. The two also discussed prospects for South Korea. Cheong-wade did not provide any further details about their meeting. The government will be injecting around $11 billion into the market ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday. This is an annual measure to help small and mid-sized companies with their cash flow, according to the Financial Services Commission on Monday. About $8 billion will be provided in the form of low-interest loans through government-run banks, and about $3 billion will flow into the market through the Korea Credit Guarantee Fund, providing credit guarantee for promising SMEs which lack tangible collateral. The FSC said that it hopes the money supply will help these firms meet payment deadlines and pay their employees holiday bonuses. The nation's economy is heavily reliant on semiconductor exports. While Seoul's chip makers had no rivals in the past, they anticipate fierce competition from Beijing. One local think tank forecasts China could surpass Korea in technologies relevant to this field in the future. Go Ryuni provides a closer look.
Researchers at Hyundai Research Institute have warned that Korea's semiconductor industry is expected to face increased pressure from Chinese rivals. It says local companies' market share in the global chip industry will decrease at a faster rate if special countermeasures aren't prepared. This comes after Beijing's moves to dominate high-tech industries, including semiconductors, by increasing investment. This is part of Beijing's Made in China 2025 goals aimed at increasing the domestic content of core components. Although the movement has been hit by the U.S.-China trade war, previous plans include increasing the proportion of homemade chips so they account for 40% of the local market by 2020 and at least 70% by 2025. An economic expert provided a rough timeline on when China's chip-making technology might surpass Korea's.
To find out the technological gap between the two countries, let's take a look at the type of NAND flash produced by China last year. This particular product was what Korea produced 4 years ago. So even if China begins to produce DRAM, there's that gap of 3 to 4 years in terms of technology. And therefore, to speed things up, China is actively looking into mergers and acquisitions and facilities investment.
Meanwhile, a separate report by research firm Trendfor shows that China's semiconductor industry revenue will grow by more than 16% in 2019. Although this marks the slowest pace in 5 years because of the continued trade conflicts, the report says the local chip industry will continue to grow, thanks to emerging technologies like AI, 5G, and autonomous vehicles. 고르니, Arirang News.
Duty-free shops are set to be introduced in the arrival halls of Incheon International Airport this year. The move will provide greater convenience to passengers while also helping to create new jobs. For details, let's turn to our Seo Bo-bin.
Starting this year, duty-free shops will be appearing in Incheon International Airport's arrival halls. On Monday, the Korea Customs Service released the report New Customs Administration 2019, which contains plans to reduce the inconvenience for passengers of having to carry duty-free items purchased in Korea, as well as create new jobs by turning overseas consumption into domestic consumption. The operators are limited to small and medium-sized enterprises to help increase the variety of duty-free shops and develop win-win growth with large enterprises. The project will first run in Incheon International Airport for 6 months and then be expanded to other major airports nationwide. Sales of tobacco products will be restricted, and shops won't be allowed to sell certain other items based on quarantine rules. The sales limit per person will be $600. Seo Bo-bin, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea and the Financial Supervisory Service conducted a survey to find out the country's financial literacy. It shows South Koreans rank below the OECD average. Kim Ye-sung help us look beyond the digits.
The results of a survey suggest a financial literacy score for Koreans of 62.2, which is lower than the OECD average of 64.9. Financial literacy is defined by the OECD as a combination of knowledge, attitude, and behavior necessary to make sound financial decisions and ultimately achieve individual financial well-being. Using the same OECD measurement consisting of 18 questions, the Bank of Korea and the Financial Supervisory Service conducted a survey last year on 2,400 Koreans aged between 18 and 79. The respondents scored particularly low on financial behavior, which includes financial planning, and on financial attitude, which is about attitudes toward consumption, saving, and money. There was not much difference in financial literacy between men and women. By age group, those in their 30s score the highest at 64.9, followed by those in their 40s and 50s.
Those older than 60 scored below 60 points because of a lack of knowledge of financial skills and products. Among people in their 20s, financial behavior and attitude are changing. They put more value on consumption than on saving or investing for the future.
Financial literacy also differed by income. People earning more than 50 million Korean won or around $45,000 a year scored 65.6, while those earning less than $27,000 a year scored 58. The Financial Supervisory Service and the Bank of Korea said strengthening financial education for the elderly, lower income groups, and young people will be important, and said they'll work with economic research institutions in the country to improve financial literacy overall. Kim Ye-sung, Arirang News.
As part of efforts to reduce fine dust, last week South Korea conducted its first cloud seeding test. According to the Environment Ministry and Weather Agency, they failed to produce rain. On Friday, a plane took off from Gimpo Airport near Seoul carrying silver iodide, a chemical that helps form water droplets inside clouds. It headed for the western coast of Gyeonggi-do Province and went down to the coast of Jeollabuk-do Province. Along the way, the plane sprayed 24 bursts of silver iodide above the clouds that had formed over the sea. The government said it will conduct 14 more tests this year and make artificial rain a success by 2024. As more and more Koreans live longer and healthier than ever before, there's an ongoing debate on whether the official age that defines the start of the twilight years should be raised to 70 from the current 65. But it's not just a matter of bumping up the number, as it would lead to various social and economic complexities. Oh Soo-young delves deeper into this topic.
1 in 2 Koreans believe people in their late 60s should not be categorized as senior citizens. A poll conducted by Realmeter found that 55.9% of some 504 respondents were in favor of raising the senior citizen age to 70 from the current threshold of 65, while 41% said the age should stay the same. The survey also noted that there has been a general shift of perception towards older people in the country as life expectancy continues to increase. Korea is also grappling with chronic demographic issues, including low birth rate and a rapidly ageing population, which puts increasing stress on the younger generation and on the pension system. Those in favour of raising the age range believe it could help reduce various social burdens, according to the pollster.
Contrary to past conceptions, I think those who are 65 years old are still young and productive. My parents want to continue working, and I think if the senior citizen age increases, there will be various benefits economically, socially, and on a national level.
Meanwhile, others cited concerns that poverty rates among the elderly could worsen if those aged above 65 cannot find jobs and lose their welfare benefits.
I am nearing that age range right now, and I think there will be benefits if we keep the current standard. If there is social consensus for the age limit to be raised, there will have to be opportunities for older people like us to maintain our income and find other work.
In Korea, the official retirement age is currently set at 60, and basic pension payouts are available from the age of 65.
The good news is that raising the age range will allow more people to remain economically active. But the bad news is it doesn't mean pensions received at the right time. It does also affect the younger generation, employment and social welfare for senior citizens, so this is not just a simple matter.
Professor Oh says there should be an in-depth analysis on the impact of an upward shift in the senior citizen age, which should be shared with the public before policy changes are considered. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The novel titled Kim Ji-young, born in 1982, is garnering immense popularity in Japan. Not a surprising development considering how Korean literature is highly in demand abroad these days. Yoon Jung-min zooms in on the growing success of these works.
Kim Ji-young, born in 1982 by South Korean author Cho Nam-ju, has sold more than 50,000 copies in Japan since its release last December. The novel portrays 30-something Kim Ji-young, who experiences gender discrimination in society through a series of anecdotes. The heroine represents ordinary women in society. Her name, Kim Ji-young, uses the most common first name for girls born in the late 70s and early 80s in Korea. The issues of unfairness resonate with readers not just in Korea but also in neighboring Japan.
Japanese society also recognized the alienation of women and gender discrimination, just as in Korean society. Such issues have been publicly brought up, and the novel has provided an opportunity to discuss gender issues in Japan too.
According to statistics by the Culture Ministry last year, fewer and fewer people tend to read these days, but some Korean literature has proved successful both at home and abroad. The Vegetarian by Hangang, a story about a woman refusing to eat meat, won the Man Booker International Prize in 2016 after being introduced in the UK. And Please Look After Mom by Shin Kyung-suk, which looks at the self-sacrifice of mothers, has sold hundreds of thousands of copies in the US.
Demand for Korean literature is increasing. It is important to nurture professional translators who have a high understanding of cultures of both countries. In addition to linguistic talent, I believe local publishers should work harder to make the most of opportunities based on the Korean wave in literature. Also, our society needs to take more interest in literature to create good content.
Experts say literature has the power to affect readers regardless of nationality or ethnicity, and that access to works from different cultures can improve the overall quality and variety of literature for readers around the world. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, some pretty strong wind is expected overnight.
Yes, Daniel, a cold wind from the northwest will continue through the night until tomorrow morning in Korea. Now, if you look at the readings in Seoul, we are expecting a steep drop in our temperatures. The coldest reading about 5 degrees lower than this morning, so dress in extra layers tomorrow during your commute to work. Now, the cold won't stick around for too long, though. Temperatures are expected to recover quickly into the afternoon under partly cloudy skies. And for Beijing and Tokyo, the weather will be similar to the southern parts of Korean Peninsula. Now brace yourselves for a freezing morning tomorrow if you are in the northern parts of the nation. Seoul dropping down to -6 degrees Celsius, while Chuncheon will hit -11 degrees. It'll get cloudy as the day goes on, with highs warmer than the seasonal average for lots of regions. Now Seoul rising up to 5 degrees, while Busan hits into the low teens. In this crisp weather, rain is predicted in Jeju and the southern regions on Wednesday, which will eventually cover the whole country by Thursday. And after the nationwide rain, we will start the day with another bitterly cold weather. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you in tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. As always, thank you for watching.